Boesak, can you just highlight, you addressed the importance of this event here in Sea Point on the stage. Can you just highlight that for us once again, please?
Well, the importance of this event is that we are joining millions of people across the world in a global day of solidarity with Palestine. And to be honest with you, if you had asked me 5 years ago whether we would ever have such a day in the numbers that we're having it today across the world and here, I would have thought that was an impossible dream. It was a joke, because unlike us, especially after 1976 and the revolution of the children and the slaughter in Soweto, and then later on across the world, across the country, the world had risen up in solidarity with South Africa. I mean, I saw that with my own eyes during the 1980s, that even the mighty pro-apartheid Reagan regime had to adopt an anti-apartheid bill which sanctioned South Africa quite severely. And so, but Palestine has never had that. And for Palestinians, this must be a wonderful, wonderful moment. And I am so glad that Cape Town has realized what a privilege it is for us to participate in a day like this.
Just in terms of Cape Town and management here, you spoke about the enforcement here from the city of Cape Town when it comes to people putting up Palestinian flags in support of this cause.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's clear that the city of Cape Town, the DA as a whole in the country, is pro-Zionist. They are pro-Israel. If they had cared one little bit as much for our own people as they seem to care for Zionist apartheid Israel, Cape Town would be a different city and the Western Cape would be a different place. And this thing that the DA takes upon itself to nullify our constitution by removing the flags from walls in the city as if people have no freedom of expression, that is not only Zionist, that is totally un-South African, it is anti-constitutional, and they must be told that. And that's why I am one of those people who are encouraging people. If you have a wall, especially if it faces the street, put the flag there. It is clear that in this province especially, and in this city especially, our voice for Palestine must be heard, because it's only coming from the people. It's not coming from the city's government. It's not coming from the Western Cape government. In fact, they are encouraging Netanyahu in this genocide, and they don't even understand how much they are knee-deep in the blood of Palestinian children. And so it's up to the people to speak in any way that we can.
Just lastly from me, Dr. Boesak, after you've heard the two-day proceedings at the ICJ this week, what do you think South Africa's chances are at success?
It's very difficult to say, because, I mean, you don't know all of those judges at the court. One thing I can say, if this thing goes against South Africa, that court must be more biased than even the most pessimistic person. I mean, the case that South Africa has put together has been absolutely brilliant. Even for a layperson like me, it was set out logically, clearly, without any shenanigans or anything like that. And the brilliant thing is how, in lieu of their own arguments, they simply let the government of Israel speak, Netanyahu and Smotrich and all of those people. And I think that is more convincing than any argument that we can make. I think it's a brilliant case. Israel's response was predictable, but it is, I mean, I felt some pity for them, because how can you defend the indefensible? How can you defend the fact that children are being killed on the scale that they are doing this? How can you do what Nazi Germany had done to you and still try to play the victim in the eyes of the world? If they win this case, then justice truly has no place in the highest courts of the country. But if we win this case, it'll be a significant blow, because then the onus will not only be on the Israeli government to carry out the instructions of the court. The onus will also be on their biggest supporter, the United States, the United Kingdom, the European countries who have been encouraging Israel all this time, and the onus will be on all of those countries in the United Nations, because they will also now have the obligation to make sure that they do everything that they can to stop the bloodshed and to bring a ceasefire and to bring an end to the war.
Dr. Boesak, do you think it's ordinary people like here that force the South African government and Cyril Ramaphosa's government to actually go to the ICJ?
Oh, that's the point that I've been making for so long. I mean, it is a great thing, but the credit, apart from going to the South African governments, really go to the South African people. We have been on the streets for weeks before the government even thought of doing anything. We had put demands on the table from the very beginning. And I hope the government understands that going to the ICJ is doing but one thing amongst the many things that we still can do as a government. If we can give the lead on this question, if we can challenge the most powerful countries in the world on this question legally, then we can challenge them practically and politically, which will also be a moral challenge. We can support BDS in the face of what states in the United States are trying to do, or countries in Europe are trying to do, where you cannot even say free Palestine without risking going to prison. And South Africa's people will have to make sure that South Africa's government understands. As I say, and even though the ANC gets angry with me, Mr. Ramaphosa must know he is the president of the Republic of South Africa. He's not the president of Zionist apartheid Israel. And so he's got to listen to his people if he wants to retain the respect of his office in the hearts of his people.
Dr. Boesak, the rest of the world is still quite silent with regards to even covering of the ICJ case. It's still controlling the narrative as well. What is your message to the rest of the countries that would like to support South Africa but not really doing so right now?
Well, I mean, we can give up on the countries of the West, I think. The good thing of the countries of the West is that their people are rising up in their millions, and in the United States. Now, I live there, so you have actually no idea what it feels like to have that propaganda in your face after hour, all day long. And in the face of that tsunami of propaganda, for people to rise up, 300,000 Jews in New York City in one day, 1 million people on the streets of London on one day, and you can go on and on. So it means that the narrative is not only changing, but the people is now directing the narrative themselves. So the official propaganda is having less and less traction. We were at the ICJ the other day. There was not one single major network in the United States that even referred to it. But that doesn't matter, because we have young people, we have YouTube, we have social media, and that message is spreading faster than they will think. I really do think that the tide has turned decisively, and if they rule in our favor, and Netanyahu and Biden decide not to obey the court's order, I think that will make people even more determined to make sure that Palestine understands that they understand what is at stake.
Dr. Boesak, so just as Palestine has supporters here, so does Israel. What can we say, or how do we educate those people that are backing Israel?
Well, you've got to accept that there are some people on this course that will refuse to be educated because they can't afford to say yes to you. If they say we are on the side of Palestine, they will have to say we have been standing on the side of murderers of children. They have to say we have been backing a genocide. They have to say we were in support of a war of extermination. So that's difficult. But what will convince them is this, that we are here and we will be here every occasion that we can. And if they want to reason, let us reason. But they know that we have right on our side. They have no arguments. Like that legal team the other day, it's actually quite pitiful to watch them trying to defend what is not really defensible. And so, and also, I mean, there's lots of money at stake. All these people have ties with businesses. And I mean, I keep on saying, how many people in business world in South Africa have already talked to Netanyahu to get licenses for those unexplored oil and gas reserves on the north coast of Gaza, because that's also what this war is all about. And so for them, if their stomach and their money is their God, then humanity must take a backseat. But all we can do is to expose and expose and expose the truth, and the truth will do its own work.
Dr. Boesak, the community in the Western Cape seems very overwhelmed by the bylaws in the Western Cape that are imposed by the DA. What is your message to the larger community? Should they feel overwhelmed and threatened by some of the bylaws imposed on them?
Well, I will say to the community, just think a few years back. In the 1980s, it was terrorism to call for sanctions. We did. In the 1980s, it was terrorism to organize a march and call for the release of Mandela. We did. It was terrorism to stand up and tell apartheid they are a sin, a heresy, and a blasphemy, but we did. So it is in our people's DNA to know that there are laws that serve justice and that there are unjust laws. We do not obey unjust laws. The DA is unconstitutional, and it's not because they do not know, but the DA has no respect for our constitution. That is why they have no respect for the expression of freedom of our own people. And that's why I am saying to people, you can't have the history that you have, and now you bow down before a racist administration in the city and the racist administration in the province, and you let them tell you what you have to do in this case. No, I think our history must inspire us. Our will and our determination must continue to guide us, and we must know every day that we can say no to the DA, not just in painting a flag, but at the ballot box as well. And they must understand that's how far we'll go.